Welcome to Date with Danu. Today we are going to speak about what is it to be in the big house and see all the debates that go down when it comes to the future of our country. To speak to us more about it, we have some amazing people on the show. Let's get on with it.
Hi, I'm Harsha Silva.
I'm Eran, Wickramaratne. I haven't been on a date for a long time, so I'm going on a date with Danu.
No, we are going on a date. We are both going on a date
How
with
can
Danu.
three people be on the date at the same time?
That's a difficult question to answer. I don't know what to say. Honest, this is serious. Wait, are we recording? Danu is a character and a three-quarter. The size also, I think. But he does all kinds of weird things and gets people to agree. If you don't agree, he'll hound you for days and months and somehow get an ears from you. So here we are.
I have watched Danu. He's actually grown. I mean, grown, but also I watched him. I was referring to age actually, but he's grown. And so look forward to having this chat with him.
And I've seen many others on this program. I've come in here to do this thing and I'm still not decided. I'm still thinking, but I probably will go through with it.
And we have these three gentlemen here. We have Mr. Kabir, we have Harsha, who has been here a few times, and we have Eran. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And super happy to have you all. Let's start off with this question. So this is going to be a very basic date with Danu. I just want answers from people who love this country as much as we all do. How are we looking as a country from an economist point of view?
Well, from an economist point of view, we are looking pretty bad, shaken up. But as a country, I think we are resilient. We've been standing up to many challenges, and right now, this one too, the economic challenge, I think the country has stood strong. The issue is that Sri Lanka has messed itself up in terms of an economic policy, in terms of pursuing, doing the right things. So it's like, what should have been done 20 years ago is now all landed in one go. And I guess this is the time that the people will have to stand up and say, yes, we have to change the system. So it's a challenge that has come up to not only politicians. People misread the whole thing and think it's the politicians who need to get this done. It's, I think, a challenge that has to be shared by the people, the voters and the voted.
Dr. Harsha, I still remember one of your speeches in the Parliament in 2020, where you said we are going to come to a very bad stage when it comes to money, and we need to look at IMF immediately. And I remember you quoting it somewhere, saying that even former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has even called you and said, yes, it's true. What happened? Why did we sit on it?
We, I think, was completely misled by so-called people who knew everything. The government should have listened to experts. I'm not talking about me or the rest of our team, but there were independent professionals, economists, both here and overseas, who saw the signs. We certainly saw the signs. And if they went to the IMF in 2020, the rupee was still under 200 to the dollar. Interest rates were still around, 10% or so. Inflation would have been about still around 10%, as opposed to now rupees at 370. Interest rates are 36. And inflation, food inflation is 95. So what could have been resolved then with minimum pain, still some pain, now we have to resolve with maximum pain. And my worry is that pain, I don't think can be withstood by the people.
We have been suffering throughout the years.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, yeah, but this is the biggest blow. And the issue is like Kabir said, yes, I mean, everybody has to deal with it. Everybody has to share part of the pain. But how is that divided? You know, who's going to have to suffer more? Because already people are suffering,
Despite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, just today, the Red Cross says 96% of Sri Lanka's households have either cut down on their food intake or brought down the quality of the food that they are consuming. So that's the whole country.
That's true. Actually, and it's sad that we also get used to it so fast, and we will just get used to the fact of living like this and not see it as a problem. I wanted to ask you, Eran, as somebody who is member of parliament, and tell me, would you individually blame Gotabaya Rajapaksa? Because everyone said Gota go home. But would you say he, in his reign, did all the mistake?
No, I wouldn't say that. Definitely, he exacerbated the problem that was already there. That's for sure. And he has to take responsibility for that, and he should go home and stay at home as well. But the problem is much deeper. We are all focused presently on Sri Lanka's immediate economic crisis. You see, fuel shortages, gas shortages, food prices, inflation. We've all talked about these things. Foreign exchange reserves are not there. All these immediate issues. But I think the country's problems are much deeper than the immediate economic issues. We have been struggling with these problems, since independence, and certainly got exacerbated in the 1950s. Right? We are a multicultural society, right? And we haven't really dealt with that. We haven't dealt with the issues of identity, equality, inclusiveness, meritocratic principle. If you take a look at politics even today, still we are very based on families. You see, not on the principle of meritocracy,
That's
right?
true.
It should be merit-based. So our issues are very, 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 very fundamental, right? And we need to deal with the fundamental issues, and I think that will lay the foundation for this country to really zoom. The present economic crisis, three of us are confident that it could be put right, but you need a mandate from the people to do so.
Right. Well, these three don't fall into the kissing of the babies political campaigns. Correct? Yeah. Baba lassanai. But I wanted to ask you, looking at how the parliament is working right now, the government is working right now, it's quite complicated. If you're someone who is outside looking into us, it's quite puzzling. Now, we do have ministers who are running a few ministries, and they're appointed by the president, but they are from different parties. Do you all feel, when I think offers came your way as well, you letting it go, do you feel that you're not serving at the time that is needed, or do you feel it's a good decision on the long term? I'm going to get all three of you answer this.
In my view, I think we made the right decision, because we believed that if we were going to, definitely the country needed everyone to put in their part of their effort. But if we were going to do our job, then we needed to have a team that was dependable, reliable, trustworthy, and accountable. And we felt that we couldn't get to that objective with the existing people in government. It had to be a clean sweep. Either they were to give us power or to go have an election and let us be elected.
But
So
do you think the
we
country
couldn't have-
had money for an election?
Yeah, the getting money for the election was not a big issue actually. It was about, if you had the elections, you might have delayed the IMF process a few months. But anyway, the IMF process got delayed because there was an
There was a
irregular,
change,
there was problems. So I think we made the right decision of not going to just jump in and grab power for the sake of power. We are doing a bigger role being in the opposition. We are constructive opposition, and I think there we are playing a better role.
Is your view the same?
Yes, my view is the same, Danu. We are, like Eran said, confident we can put this right. And that needs an ideological change. You see, you cannot be frogs in the well, right? You have to break down the walls and build bridges and connect Sri Lanka to the rest of the world. In order to do that, you have to integrate with what are called global manufacturing networks, supply chains. And for that to happen, you have to create efficient and you see much more productive production processes here. You have to have internationally competitive industries, right? So there are a whole lot of reforms that need to happen to get to that point. And that's an ideology, right? That is different from the ideology where one would say, okay, let's put up 300% tax barriers, duty barriers, so that inefficient companies that somehow are close to the political, leadership get protected and they make profits hand over fist. You see? But that is not what we need to create. We need to create a highly competitive and efficient, what we call a social market economy. So that's the real way forward into the future. But before you do any of that, first you need to stabilize this economy and let the people decide which way they want to go.
We'll come back with more because I really want to ask, would SJB and UMP ever merge? And we do come back. Welcome back to the show. So we stopped on a very, what can I say, big question. Would you all like to merge as two parties? Because at the end of the day, it did come from the UMP.
Everybody's looking in my direction. Okay.
You're the one wearing green.
Green, that's what
Yeah.
I was going to get there.
Yeah, so there are several ways to look at this. On one way is that we are the UNP. What I mean by that is we embody the philosophy of the UNP. The UNP was created in 1946 and it was created as a united national party, inclusive party, right, which included every ethnic group in this country, religious group, social class, everybody coming together. So we embody that philosophy. I would say on the economy, the UNP is identified more with a liberal kind of market, liberal economy, and we are tilted more towards a social market economy. I.e., we believe in the markets, we believe that the private sector can create value, we believe in global integration, we believe in trade and investment being liberalized, but we also believe that there are less fortunate people. There are people who have had no opportunity in life, that we as a party have a social responsibility to them too. That is why we are a social market, we believe in a social market economy. So on one hand, it's not so much about the names UNP and SJB, it's that with the people with those philosophy need to come together. So Danu, if you are being technical and saying, but technically can they come together? Yes, we stepped out of the UNP only for one reason. We wanted the party democratized, right? And we want to make sure that we leave a legacy of democracy. And if that can be done, there is no reason why all the forces who share in the same platform can't come together. So I won't get boxed in by just letters. I would say that those forces should come together because then we are really the alternative for what we have seen over the past 20 years with the Rajapaksas, really the alternative for that. And therefore we are certainly open to all these forces coming together.
Well, in recent days, we have been seeing freedom of speech being crippled on a few posts, and people are a bit worried to address their opinions on social platforms. Recently, there was a protest organized, and there was a bigger outcome that also ended up putting people in prison. Tell me, do you feel that this current government is working in a way to keep the truth covered, or are they working in a way to keep it quiet until the country can stand up? I like how the three of them sort of see who is taking it.
We can all take it, that's not a problem. Well, I'd like to go back to your earlier question about asking whether the UNP and the SJB would get together. The bigger question is that I would ask the people of this country, did you ever imagine that the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna would accept Ranil Wickramaratne as their president? I mean, absolutely unthinkable, right? So a lot of unthinkable things can happen. Nothing is beyond. But as Eran explained that properly, that's where we stand. Now, about using, about freedom of speech, expression, etc., it's an essential part of a thriving democracy. It's very important. But there is also something called the freedom of the wild ass, so it can't be that. The thing, what we believe is, as long as the government is using the normal legal procedures in the country to manage its affairs, we have no issues. But the problem with this government is they brought in draconian legislation. They're using the PTA, they're using the emergency, and on the pretext of pulling people in and saying they're breaking the law. It's not under the usual normal law. Using the special measures when they intimidate people, harass people, and stop people from their freedom of expression, then that is not acceptable.
The word draconian is what I learned on TikTok, as it was done a few times. That's how I learned it. Now, there are a few young ministers who are running the scene these days. It could be for fuel, it could be for tourism. And we are seeing, at least the fuel came to some kind of streamlined measure where I didn't have to wait for 3 days. Now, we are starting to appreciate small things like that, because I don't think we should actually stay in line for fuel today, but we are still happy to say that we are not standing for 72 hours anymore. What are your thoughts on the ministers who have taken this at this time to run with it?
I mean, let's take petroleum, because you use that as an example. I think Kanchana is trying hard, and I think he has scored some victories. And it doesn't really matter which side of the political aisle you are. If a man is trying to do a good job, we should encourage. So therefore, that's my thought on what he is doing. Now, the issue really is, we had to stay in line for 3 days, now we don't, but we get a limited quantity of fuel. It's like saying inflation is now 95%, 3 months down the road, if it is 65%, we'll say, it's 60%, not 95%, so we are better off. Look, we don't deserve any of this. Our people have worked hard over the years, and they expected the government to deliver on their promise, because we were actually growing. This country was recording what is called a positive balance in what's called the primary account of the budget. In non-technical terms, it was making more money than it was spending, right? Yes, taxes were at a reasonably high level, but people were not complaining. Look, there were issues always, but the country was moving forward, right? Inflation was less than 5%. The country grew at around 5.5%, right? The revised numbers are out from the Department of Census and Statistics. The rupee could have been stronger, but it was at a reasonably strong level. This country was then given to these Rajapaksas, look, right, who promised some glorious something, I forget, right? What was it called, Danu, you remember? They had Saubhagya, prosperity and glorious something, right? And what happened? Right, we became the first country in Asia to go bankrupt in 50 years. In 50 years. Now you're telling me, look, take your 20 liters of petrol, don't complain. aren't we, doing well? No, we are not. We are at the bottom, right? Our people, like I said, deserve a lot better, right? So while appreciating what one or two people are doing, the system, the structures, the game plan, I don't think is correct. And the people who are trying to implement, and I must say this, Ranil Wickramaratne or President Ranil Wickramaratne's sort of the long-term thinking, we agree, right? Or rather, shall we say, it is what we built, it is what we created. Even the social market economy is what we created together, right? So we can't oppose what he is trying to do. But in order to get there, the ideological platform is not in favor. So that is why we are saying that whole, the philosophy, the ideology has to change to get to the right path.
On that note, I want to speak about the president when we do come back, considering the fact that all of you worked very well with him. I do want to know whether he's used as a puppet in this whole process. Your opinion. Welcome back. Now let's go back few months at least, or no, a few years. We knew of the opposition leader, and then we knew all of you as great set of leaders who sort of left your private, comfortable jobs where you all would have got everything that you all want, traveled abroad more frequently, and had secretaries to work with you all and made life easy. But you all left all of that to come and serve the country, and you all left good pays to work for very small salaries. So appreciate that. But my question is, working with a person called Ranil Wickramaratne and seeing him today, do you feel that there is a change in the person, and do you feel that he has been put there and he's just there for the power? I just all come to you again.
I'll take it first. Danu, when you measure something, you have to have some key performance indicators to measure it with. Otherwise, it's back just to opinions. I like, you don't like, somebody else is neutral, and so forth and so on. So I think you have to measure against these performances. Now, you have been completely bought over. For example, your comment, I don't have to wait 72 hours for my petrol now, things have improved. So what happened, right? It really made it really bad, brought down your expectations, and now your expectations are to some extent being met.
Yeah, so like 15-hour power cut to like 2 hours.
That's right. So it's some, okay, your expectations are lower, it's being met kind of thing. So when we look at this crisis this country is in, I don't compare it with this rubbish. You see, you have 32 hours brought into 20 minutes and you get 20 liters or whatever. I think our expectations need to be high. Sri Lanka is South Asia's leading country. Right? Whether you talk about literacy, education, per capita incomes, whatever you talk about, right? That's where we were. What was our aspiration? Not to be South Asia's, but to be Asia's leading country. That was our aspiration. We have to measure it from there. We are nowhere near it, right? And there are many reasons we are nowhere near it. One is incompetent people in politics. Often people think what went wrong with this country is corruption. Of course, we are anti-corrupt. We want corrupt people charged and if punished, if necessary imprisoned. We want that. We stand for that. But really it went wrong because we have incompetent people. That's one. Second thing is we have wrong policies. From the language policies of 1956, right? If you look at the economic policies we pursued for a long time before we actually opened the economy, to education. Even today, a mother doesn't care whether this child is educated from a, education coming from Korea or Russia. The mother wants education. The supply is irrelevant. Quality standards, yes, we are all for that. Governments must regulate. We are all for that. But that's what really went wrong with this country. We look at policy. So people and policy. Now you specifically asked me about Ranil Wickramaratne. I can't duck the question. No, I'm not allowed to duck it. So he also needs to be measured with a KPI. He's been the leader of the party for the last 28 years. I'm going to reverse it. 28 years leader of the party. I'm going to ask you, right, whether he has succeeded or not. What were your expectations, right? For those 28 years, that party, the United National Party, to which we all belong, hasn't had a presidential candidate for 28 years, right? So I'm asking the question directly, right? In a democracy, right, if you're a CEO of a company or something like that, you're given the task, you have to run it, the board will meet you, they will discuss with you. After 2 years, if they think you're not performing, they'll call you and politely tell you, can you please put your resignation letter, and we will come to an arrangement, we'll hire the next CEO, right? That's how it will work in a company. That's how it will work in the private sector. So why isn't it working in the country, right? So I think I have answered your question. I think we need to be above people. To me, people don't really matter, right? Because when people stormed this city, they said we want a systems change. It's not about individuals. It's about a systems change. It's about ethics. It's about values. It's about policies. It's about prosperity. It's about taking care of the vulnerable. This is the Sri Lanka we want. I don't want, just this year 700,000 people have got passports to migrate. That's not the Sri Lanka we want. Who is responsible for that? All the leaders who have been here are responsible for that. Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the last of it, but all of them are responsible. So that is why I hope I have answered your question. These leaders, to be frank with you, if you look at it in terms of a KPI, are failures.
Yes. You did not have a presidential candidate, or wasn't there anyone allowed to be a presidential candidate?
Yes, so that is part of the game. So when you now look at it like this, you asked a very interesting question, right? There was twice in the United National Party where we should have put another candidate from the United National Party. We didn't. We put an outsider, right? And the leader remained the leader. This is what actually happened. There's nothing to hide. Now, unfortunately, and I hope I'm wrong here, I am wondering whether the Rajapaksas have learnt a lesson there and whether Rajapaksas think the same. Because look at it, President Gotabaya, Prime Minister Mahinda, Finance Minister Basil, people came out and said, Finance Minister, throw him out. He went. People came out and said, Prime Minister, throw him out. We don't want Mahinda. People came out and said, Gotabaya, throw him out. We don't want Gotabaya. That's what people actually came and said and wanted a change. So what should happen next? Somebody from within their party should emerge as the leader and should be contesting the next election. I'm wondering whether they have learnt a lesson. And they are also thinking that protect the party, keep the leadership within the family, right, and put somebody else. Sri Lanka has to get out of this politics. This politics we have to get out of. If we really want to see this country prosper, it needs to be on a meritocratic principle where capable, the platform should be open for capable people to come forward. That's what I personally believe. I'm in politics to basically keep all those young people in this country, the educated young people, the energetic young people, they are needed if we are going to really develop this country.
We lost over 200 doctors. That itself is a sad sight. We have more. I want to ask you a question about, we have always spoken about how dollars will just come into a country that is so blessed like us, but it ain't coming in. So I want to speak about, are we doing it right now at least? After this. Welcome back. Now we have always learnt in school, of course, a long time ago, and they simply have not changed it still. Cinnamon, tea, these are the things that bring in money, but to be real, it's tourism and also the labor that we send from this country that brings in the dollars, and the labor does not send the money the right way, and that has been a request. Personally, tell me, what is your take on that? Why can't people follow the correct pathway and not use undial in sending money here?
Yeah, it's all about credibility, right? Financial credibility. People have to trust their government and the system that they are getting paid dollar for dollar. So when the country is maintaining an artificial exchange rate, and when the actual exchange rate you get on the dollar is much more, people wouldn't bring in their money. That's basic purely supply and demand. So if the government had allowed the market to react, allowed the rupee for the dollar to settle at a realistic rate, then there would have been people bringing in their money. So what happened was, after a bitter lesson, which actually we lost all our reserves trying to defend the rupee. We lost virtually up to $6 billion of our reserves trying to defend that the rupee actually. And that I hold responsible the then Minister of Finance and then the then governors of the central bank, because they changed governors. There were two governors and they were responsible. But once they allowed the rupee to settle, the dollar to settle at a realistic rate, when it moved up from 280 to 360, what happened? Now today the rate between the undial rate for the dollar and the bank rate is hardly negligible. So people are bringing in their monies officially rather than bringing it underground. That's basically pure business sense. And any government should learn to allow the free market to operate. Right? So we don't have a proper exchange rate policy, and the central bank had not intervened in the right manner. That was the main reason. And of course the dollar crisis came because, you know, from 1948 we have tried to diversify our exports. So we had tea rubber and coconut and agriculture, but we moved out of agriculture. Agriculture percentages reduced after the 77 open market economy that JRJ set up, and from that onwards industrial exports increased. And if you see, by 1994 there was a free trade zone. We had manufacturing exports, we were earning dollars. We had the garment industry, which Honorable late Premadasa did, we were bringing in the dollars. Then we had JRJ again set up the first ever opportunity for us to go and send our people to work abroad. We set up our embassies in the Middle East, we set up links, and then we started sending people out. Then now that's a big income earner. But if you look at after 1994 and especially after 2005, we've been borrowing in dollars, billions of dollars, but we haven't set up one industry that is making $1 for the country. We basically spent that money putting up some absurd infrastructure, some wasteful projects, and now we have to pay back in dollars, but we've no additional dollars to pay. Obviously we have a crisis. So basically the crisis was created by the Rajapaksas.
Now this Bangladesh is worried whether we'll actually pay them back before March. They have said hopeful that Sri Lanka will pay. Do you think we can pay?
They have a long wait.
Not March 2023 then.
Maybe
it's
barter.
a March then.
Maybe barter. Maybe we can send them some tea.
Because actually, if you walk into Bangladesh and you walk into Sri Lanka, I think we are a rich country. We are more organized on the road. Actually, our traffic is nothing, but it's sad. Wanted to ask you, some team members from the SJB became independent and then they took over ministry, especially tourism. Your thoughts on this?
I gave you thoughts on this earlier, no?
No, yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, so I'll skip this one.
Okay.
I talked about Kanchana, I don't want to talk about Harina also now that I've spoken about.
But are you happy with the work that's being done for tourism currently?
I mean, tourism is, I think we need to have a game plan. I think Kimali tried to put in a 5-year plan or something like that. Is it, are we trying to bring in 5 million tourists or 10 million tourists into this country at, $80 a night? Or are we trying to bring in half that number at $1,000 a night or $500 a night? I mean, like you said, I've also done a lot of work in Bangladesh before I became an MP. I mean, yeah, when you get off the airport in Dhaka, I usually get a really nauseating feeling, and it probably won't go away for 2 days because the air is so polluted, right? And traffic, I have seen policemen actually take canes out and pull three-wheeler drivers and hit them. You've seen them, right?
And also, all their cars are barricaded around.
Yeah, it's got these iron frames around the lamps and all. So what I'm saying is, look at this country. it's really an amazing place, right? So we can attract the right people here, but I still think we need to put in a lot of infrastructure. Even if a tourist comes now, he or she can only enjoy limited the natural beauty of this country. And so I'll leave it at that, and I'm sure they have some plan. And one thing we mustn't do, Danu, is somebody comes and puts in a plan, and the next person comes and completely trashes that plan and restarts the whole process.
So when would national policies be made?
No, so I'll give you a good example. During Malik's time at the ministry, Indira, Mrs. Malwate, right, put in a 3-year or a 5-year export development plan. And in that, they had identified like 5 different industries where we can excel in, right? And taking from where Kabir left off, I'll just give you an example. I've said it in places previously, is that in 95, Sri Lanka and Vietnam exported $3.5 billion worth of goods, right? They also did basic apparels and fish and similar things like we did tea and apparels. Now, they went from those basic products, apparels, to radios, to TVs, to computers, to electronics, to now they are into jet components and things like that. And they went up to $336 billion last year from $3.5 billion. Sri Lanka, during that same period, like Kabir said, this is the ideological issue that I was talking about earlier. Looked inwards, frogs in the well, put huge duty barriers around this country. And we went from apparels to apparels to apparels to apparels to apparels. And that also a few selected companies. Nothing have we done since then. Not a single industry did the Rajapaksas bring. And where did we go from 3.5 billion to 12.5 billion? When Vietnam went from 3.5 billion to 336 billion. Companies are opening new factories, jobs are getting created, high rises are going up, people are getting on planes and visiting neighboring countries. They are having a good time, football stadiums are full, kids are enjoying, right? Whereas here, what is this? And you want us to be happy because we are not standing in the petrol queue for 72 hours? Like Eran said, we've been failed, right? So yes, we need national policies, and that is something we have to do. We have so late in doing it, but at least now I hope that we would be able to get it done at some point.
I think national policies are so important. I think we're the only country that changes every 3 days, and change from everyone, from even the secretary and to the person who sat in the front seat. Everyone is out of that office, and a new set of people are brought in. But yeah, we have to talk more about it. But question that I need to ask when we do come back is, do we have the right leaders as options for us to choose at the next presidential election, if there is going to be one, when we come back? Welcome back. Our final segment. I know he has to run, and I want to quickly end this show. I have to ask the three of you. You have a leader, Sajid Premadasa. Do you think he is the only person who is going to run for the presidential election in the upcoming one, if there is? Yes?
Yes, according to our constitution, normally the leader of the party is the one who runs to be president. Your earlier question before the break was, what's the kind of leader you need, and what's...
No, do we have leaders in parties?
Yeah.
to
So
run.
I'm interpreting that when you say, do we have leaders? Really, what makes a leader? What is the qualification of a leader? So if you go right back in history and you look at all the leaders we have had, you had D.S.N. Nayaka, good family, wealthy, managed the businesses. John Kotalavalas, some training in the army. S.W.R.D. Bandaranaike went to university, no experience. Sirima Bandaranaike, no experience, didn't go to university. Chandrika went to university, also we had very limited experience. Premadasa had experience, no education. D.V. Vijayatunga, I think, was in the police department. Sirisena was in the Grama Sevaka department. Mahinda Rajapaksa was assistant librarian somewhere. So if you look at it like this, as a holistic picture, generally our leaders, some had education, some didn't have, but almost all didn't have the relevant experience. So if you look at the future, you name Sajid Premdas and you name the others. One thing about Sajid Premdas is he has an education, he's open, he listens, he studies, and you need to privately, why don't you invite him on your program? You need to talk with him, right? And because
I have
then
and couldn't get hold.
Okay. Okay.
Please ask and give. I'll be happy to.
We'll. So what I'm saying is, right, intelligent and all that kind of thing. And then you look at all the other parties and who they are. Right. Then my comparison then is going to go to what I compared with earlier. We are not in the Asian League. In the Asian League, we know about Bangladesh, we know about Pakistan, we know about India, we know about all these families and all the competencies and all the issues that have come. And in India, now we're finding that others have also begun to emerge. So I think we have to really look at it and look at our future and then decide, are we going to be in the Asian League, right? So obviously it's a democracy. People will vote the people they want to vote. I move away from the idea of a leader because society is complex, the world is complex, and this whole idea that one person can solve all our problems, for 40 years we haven't seen it not happen. I'm telling you in the next 40 years it's not going to happen either. So I think a leader is somebody who can mesh a team together, get different competencies and experience levels, and then forge the country forward. And that is why I have hope in the SJB.
I know you have to go. I'm asking you this question. For us to come out of this, realistically, how long would it take?
Depends on what you mean by coming out. If you want to put your head above water and breathe, we are doing it
marginally.
Okay right now. So
we drown occasionally.
Yes. Yeah. If we don't take
No, I'm
the
talking
right
about
steps.
sitting on the island and
Okay, having a cool time. Yeah. I think the next year is going to be crucial because there's going to be a lot of reforms that have to be made which are painful to the country. If you draw a parallel between Sri Lanka and the other countries that have gone down, that have been bankrupt, you've seen Argentina, they've misused the opportunity to revive themselves, got in worse trouble, and they're still struggling. So if Sri Lanka doesn't manage itself, coming out is going to be a long drawn affair. It's something like we could go have setbacks like Lebanon or like Afghanistan, like countries that have really gone backwards. If we play this properly, I think in 2 years Sri Lanka should be able to be in a stronger footing, but it would take us between 2 to 5 years for us even to go back to our GDP levels that we had in 2019. So basically our growth has reversed. So if you are looking at economic growth, then to come to that level, it will take between 2 to 5 years, depending on how we play. So, but however, as Harsha was also saying, if we take the correct policy measures, if we instill discipline, and if there is credibility in the country, right? People believe there's financial credibility, then more investments will come in. Policy-wise, we can attract a lot of investment into Sri Lanka, and we should be able to change the picture much faster. So we are optimistic. We believe that Sri Lanka can do it, provided the political structure doesn't mess it up.
Okay, island is far away. Finally, final question before we wrap things up. Would you all tell the youth of our country to come forward to serve the country? Because a lot of people are going away from that option. They're saying, we don't want to be cursed, we don't want to be, what's the point of getting into this? What are your thoughts? Would you let your son into politics?
Certainly not. And he's certainly not going to do that. And neither will my daughter. But then, I mean, they have very strong political views. But certainly it's not, I don't know about my daughter. She's still too young to decide. But it is not about politics. But I would rather have them here.
Then going somewhere else.
Yes. So there are two things here. One is a kid who is 18, 19 years of age. You cannot tell him or her to stay back because you are needed here. They have their own futures to think about, right? So who are we to tell them? So you have to give each kid the freedom to decide. But having said that, it is our responsibility to ensure that we create a society that they would be happy to come back to. And I'll be honest with you, Danu, that is not happening. You know, today on TikTok or whether it's on any social media platform, Instagram, right? Every kid is on Instagram. And they look at their friends or kids their age in other countries.
Or
right?
the idols.
Forget about the idols. I mean, like kids who have left their school and perhaps migrated to Australia, and how they're doing versus how we are doing. You know, I have my daughter is still in school, you know, and for the last 3 years, you know, she hadn't really been able to properly integrate with her friends. I mean, she had lost out so much. And today's ICRC report goes on to say, beyond the food crisis, they're having a severe impact on children, right? The abuse of children. The parents are angry, they are stressed out, they can't meet the daily requirements. They take it out on their children, right? It is happening, right? So in this generation, you know, who are, you know, in the formative years of life, right? And you saw the issues with the, you know, the chalk circle issue almost, right? You know, Ranil Wickramaratne talked about Grusa, but, you know, look at what happened at the golf fest the other day, right? I mean, you know, kids' future is what we are fighting about. I haven't read it, but I saw Angelina Ondaatje had written a piece in the FT. I want to read it, right? And there were parents and kids who went to the Aragale, right? My whole family went. You know, my daughter's 18th birthday was with her friends at the Independence Square, right? They were holding placards and they were very, very proud of their achievement, and so am I, right? So it is their future that we are fighting for. It's not our future. Our future, I mean, we are our own, right? And so therefore, it's our responsibility. You can't blame the kids. You can't blame the young people. You know, they need to, when they come out of school, ideally they should have the opportunity to go into a institute for high learning, you know, get a degree, diploma, whatever, right? And then go into the labor force, you know, start making some money, you know, be able to get married, have some kids, build a house. I mean, depending on, you know, general story. But that is not there.
Yeah, their simple dreams are not there.
Right? So it is up to us to fix that.
All right. Thank you so very much, gentlemen, for being here, for being very honest, for being transparent, and for being on this show. Thank you. And I know you have to go. We'll wrap the show up on that note. We will see you with another episode of Date with Danu. Till then, you keep smiling. It's a wrap.